Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of I Like to Read with Rachel Polanski. If you're new here, hi, I'm Rachel, and I like to read. I read approximately 5 to 7 books a week. I'm here to talk about them, as well as some other, little musings and diatribes on what's going on in pop culture and what's going on in my life and what led me here. We are learning every time we record. Sometimes, we're new to this, even though I listen to a million podcasts. I've never recorded one. So, we're learning. We don't need to hold the mic, directly here in front of our face. That's what you do in non-podcasting mics. Apparently, you don't have to do that. So we're not going to do that. We are learning that, I say and like a lot. We are learning that I am not good with names and settings, so at least this time I prepared ahead and pulled up each book on Goodreads, so in case I at least want to talk about something more plot-based, I don't have to seem like a total idiot, because yes, I did read them. And so what else is new? It's hot. It's summer in Los Angeles, although if you live in California, and even if you don't, this is a PSA to stay home if possible. Coronavirus is still out there. It's still real. It's large and in charge. And you need to be careful. I think, it's okay to see, I'm not a medical doctor. This is just my personal view is I think it's okay to see one or two friends that have also been responsible and or have not been infected or had close contact with people who may have been. And I think especially seeing those people in an outdoor space is great. I know I'm lucky that there's a couple of parks and trails around where I've been able to meet them. It's still necessary to go to the grocery store. It's still necessary to go do a couple of errands, but as much as you can, doing drive-through, doing drive up, not sponsored, but Target is great for drive up. You can literally, you can use the app. You have to have an account maybe, but it's free. Anything that you have in store, that is the only things they don't allow you to do for pickup are like groceries and perishable items and occasionally some other stuff, but usually if it's in stock in there. So you not only can have it ready and pick up for you at the store, but you can literally drive up and get it. And this is a feature that, again, should I just be a spokesperson for Target? I mean, maybe. I do love the corporation. So, you know what? Hold on, folks. I need a water. I forgot to bring my water in here, and really already feeling that dry mouth. So, so we're just gonna hold for a sec. All right, we are hydrated. We are back. We brought our water because it is very important to stay hydrated. And I was musing about the benefits of the Target drive up, specifically on the app. So like I was saying is, you don't even have to get out of your car. You literally drive to Target. The app is even freaking so smart that it just knows when you're there. Basically, you tell them when you're coming. You tell them what your car looks like. There's usually people out there already, employees out there, so they have your stuff ready when you're coming, and they just put it in your car and you sign for it. You've already paid for it. There's no contact, and it's crazy because I see, at least at my Target, there's people waiting probably a good quarter mile at least to get in line sometimes, and they're socially distanced, of course, but I'm I love Target, clearly, but what is so important that you can wait in line half an hour, 45 minutes, whatever? I mean, I guess if you have nothing else to do and don't know about the Drive Up app, but highly recommended. I mean, Target does have some fun little snacks and groceries that aren't available other places. They have these new Magnum Ruby chocolate ice cream bars. I have a sweet tooth that I mostly keep in control, but Ruby chocolate is a fun new thing that's come out recently. It's another brand of chocolate, type of chocolate. It's a white chocolate, but it's pink, so it's a little richer, with cocoa. I'm a dark chocolate girl myself. Milk chocolate tends to be a little too creamy. I like it thick and rich. Target, I don't know, you guys, I don't even know what we were talking about, but that's what's fun about loving to read, is because books take you anywhere, literature takes you anywhere, and look at the tangents that we're going on. So before I talk about the 5 books that I read this week, I wanted to briefly talk about a little mini series called Quiz. Quiz is a 3-part mini series that recently came out. I say recently, but it was in April. Oh, okay. I guess it was in April in Britain. in the UK, and for America it was definitely May. I was like, I knew it was a while. It was, a while, like a month ago, but I was like, it cannot have been over 2 months ago because that's insane. So Quiz is a tight little show about Major Charles Ingram. What if I just, took this whole episode in a British accent, or no, more of like a posh Queens? No, I'm sorry, I probably already lost you. So Quiz is a 3-part miniseries that originally was in the UK. Whatever, it doesn't matter where it was in the UK because chances are you're probably in America. But even if you're in the UK, hey, you can get it on AMC. Maybe Hulu as well, but it's pretty easy to find. So Quiz is a 3-part series, keep saying 3-part, about Major Charles Ingram, who won Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, which was originally a UK TV game show that America stole, just like our country. Just kidding, I'm glad for the Revolutionary War, go America. 4th of July, patriotism. Can you tell that it's been a hard, long week? I mean, I wanted to definitely get this in and let y'all know my thoughts, but sometimes, your mind just goes in like a million places, and sometimes people are here recording it, and, that's okay. So he wins Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and obviously that's like a big deal in itself, like winning £1 million prize, and which is even more than $1 million US, because I'm pretty sure the pound has always been a little bit stronger than the dollar. That's what it is. Like $1 is like $1.25 pounds. I don't know. He wins, and you're like, oh my God, that's crazy. He's great. But they think that he cheated. And how would you cheat in a game show when you're sitting just across from a host and seemingly, there's no way to cheat? They think that he coughed his way into winning. And what is so great about this series is, first of all, it is only 3 episodes. And normally I would be like, that's not enough, and I want more. And they could have made this into a 8-part series. They also could have made this into just a movie, but something about the 3-part, I took a break obviously in between each episode each week, so it came out 3 consecutive weeks, so it was just a nice little piece of a puzzle, like a 3-piece puzzle that everything fit together. And sometimes I feel like even with 8-episode series, or, looking back in the days of 22-episode series, that it was a puzzle where not all the pieces fit so smoothly. The pieces formed a puzzle this season, but there were some rough edges, and sometimes Quiz, they all just slide in so nicely. The first episode takes us through the genesis of the game show itself, and there was this whole underground ring of people because it was so new the show was so new at the time. This was in the late 90s, early 2000s. They were kind of able to hack and infiltrate the show and its way of choosing contestants and questions, and it was totally a real thing. They supposedly got involved through Charles Ingram's wife. What's her name in the show? Diana. Her brother got them involved. In the show, Charles Ingram, the main guy in question, is played by Matthew McFadden, and he is probably best known as Siobhan's husband in Succession. And then his wife is played, isn't that fun? I don't even remember his name clearly, so so good with names. And then his wife, Diana Ingram, is played by Sian S-I-A-N Clifford, who is best known as the sister in Fleabag. And then his name is not Chris, and I am done. His name is Chris Tennant in the show, but Michael Sheen, who, that guy who plays a bunch of weird, different sort of Martin Sheen a little bit. Oh, is he his son? Maybe. I don't know. I think he is. He plays the host, Chris Tennant, of the show. And anyway, so the first episode goes into the development of how this show was created, the underground sort of bits surrounding it, and then the second episode takes us into the prosecution's case as to how the Ingrams completely did it, how they cheated. It's clearly obvious. You can hear the coughing. They planned it with a seemingly random other potential contestant who just happened to be on the show that day, and through some pointed looks. And I mean, I haven't seen the actual clips and bits from the show. I don't think they ever aired, although they have to be somewhere around on the internet. but they give you a very nuanced picture in the show. And then the third episode flips it on its head and is like, well, that's a great story, but I'm going to poke some holes in it. And naturally, the truth lies in between fact and fiction. So we will never fully know. They maintain their innocence, of course. I won't spoil as to their fate, but the general public is kind of just not fully... It's one, whether or not they stole $1 million, I don't think they ever actually got the money. I mean, it's not really like an OJ case. Like, did he do it? Of course he did it. I mean, and also there were victims and lives at stake in that. And whereas this is, just stealing from a game show. Yeah, but they seem like nice and good people, and maybe they were up to some shady stuff. And even if they were, they deserve it. To get through all that. And this guy, for all intents and purposes, is kind of a buffoon, but supposedly also very smart. Maybe he was just a wacky guy putting on this performance. If I were on a game show, especially to win £1 million, $1 million, I'd probably be really weird and nervous too. I think the thing that gets people and that gets the prosecution is, there were so many times where he was about to go with the wrong answer and or claimed not to know the answer, very publicly. It was well, I see these 4 choices and I have no idea which one it is, but I'm gonna go with this one. And then at the last minute, he changes his mind or claims he thought of something else. And so it is a bit strange that happens multiple times. But again, it's something that could easily be explained. It's also not fully consistent and supported by coughing. So just check it out. It's a beautiful thing in that you can, pace it out in 3 weeks if you have any semblance of self-control that I clearly don't, except I was forced to because of streaming on cable. But now that it's out there, you can binge it in a night. You could take it over the course of 3 days, but each episode, like I said, just slides into that little puzzle, and I want to take that 3-piece puzzle and cut it up into more pieces that all fit together as little parts of the episode in themselves. Because, check it out. Quiz. Anyways, you're not here for TV shows, of course, because people who don't read don't like TV shows or any other forms of media. Although, it's kind of the inverse is true, because plenty of people watch TV and do not read. But, so where were we? Saint X. It's told from multiple perspectives. Particularly, though, we focus on the journey and evolution of Allison's younger sister, who was with their family at the time of her death and always blames herself. It's not a secret in the novel that Allison's death remains unsolved. There are 2 main suspects who are Cabana Boys during their vacation, who they suspect. We do find some semblance of the truth in the novel, but I think especially, and unfortunately, with a story like this where a young white American tourist goes missing, that these islands, particularly why the author wanted to focus on a fictional island, is because it's based on so many real stories of what does happen in the Caribbean and in these islands where tourist industries are important and where, unfortunately, police investigations have been compromised multiple times. And so then by placing it in this fictional universe, but with a very real situation, it allows the author to kind of speak to it in a candid way, without being in your face about it, but about these very real situations. She also does a great job of humanizing one of the main suspects. We get his perspective intertwined with the sister, who kind of the catalyst of what opens up her reinvestigation. Of course, a death of a sibling, particularly one that's unsolved and mysterious, will always haunt you. But this is one that she somehow, she finds him through a twist of fate, not by any sort of looking for him necessarily, but believes that the universe has brought them together. And through that, we then get his perspective and interspersed. So they're the 2 main characters, and their relationship develops in a very, a way that most people wouldn't normally, try to befriend a suspect of their sister's potential death, but through it she learns a lot about herself, a lot about truth. We learn a lot about him. His name is something with the C. His name Clive / Gogo. The island itself is a character, is the setting of this novel, but It also takes place in New York. It also is interspersed with little bits of people who were on the island and who we get to know in small doses before and after Allison's death. And so we see how that affected each of these people, whether they were a background player or somebody directly involved in her last night. And it really paints an inner portrait of who these women are and who these young girls are, and that they're not just these names and bodies, but they had real rich lives, and that their deaths reverberate through families and can also, just one person dies, but in a way, a part of everybody dies. And how do you reclaim yourself, and how do you go on living the best way that you can live without being consumed and obsessed by it, whether you know how they died or how they didn't. Scarlet heavy there. So if you're, a true crime fan, if you are a fan of, it's a darker subject, definitely not as dark as Camgirl. There is, if not a resolution, there is a nice little, I take that back. There's not necessarily a nice bow wrapped on the end of it, but there is enough of a resolution that, just like the main character, you feel as at peace as you can be, and you do feel like you have gone through quite a journey and quite the trajectory, just like these characters have, albeit in a much shorter time. So that is that. Next we have Sad Janet by Lucie Britsch. I guess this is just the sad episode. Janet is sad, as the title would state. She is super depressed, almost like My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Moshfegh, I believe. But depressed, not as intense as that. She still has a job. She still goes out in the world. She is putting on this semblance of, I have a boyfriend and I have a life, but it's just getting to be too much, and life is too hard, and it's not a lot happens. She works at a dog shelter, so there's like a bit of a B plot with that, but it's really just her train of thought and stream of consciousness going through life. And you might say, well, why do I just want to read like a book about a sad person? But it's also just like someone who isn't necessarily sad. She's sad, but just is also just going through an existential crisis and doesn't have the right resources to reach out and or doesn't want to have those resources. Those resources are there, but she's not ready for it. But to really take a look at how it's almost a comedy in itself. I don't want to say it's a little bit of a dark comedy, because plenty of comedies have depressed people. And since working at the dog shelter, there's definitely like a bit of magical realism to it. It's this like place in the woods where, yes, there are dogs and people get adopted, but there's so many different little anecdotes that make it really come alive. It's already alive with many dogs there. But it's a British novel as well, so it's always fun it's a UK novel, so it's always fun to take a little trip across the pond. So I think the biggest thing is, if you're not into that sort of like, I'm just in one character's head and this character is annoying and I don't want to hear it. But if you're up for something a little bit challenging, a little bit uncomfortable at times, but ultimately rewarding, I would definitely check out Sad Janet. Next, we have Leading Men by Christopher Castellani. So this one actually came out, on my birthday, over a year and a half ago, which, if we're talking in Rachel terms, is like light years ago. But it's one of those ones that I had way back on my Kindle, and I was just scrolling through. I'm like, I guess I bought this at some point, so I'm going to read it. What is it about? It is about purely fictionalized, but with the best intentions and with plenty of research. Tennessee Williams, Truman Capote, that sort of crowd, and Tennessee Williams' lover Frank, who believes that he is inspired in a play, and so they are in a relationship and they're gay, but there's all this with, Tennessee Williams is, of course, a playwright. So, the image of homosexuality in the media and being comfortable in your own skin. And it's kind of like, sorry, I'm just reading back to the description. So also how they get intertwined with another woman and in present day, how she reflects on their stories. And at first I was like a little bit not into it. It was just a little bit boring, but then it did pick up, and it was like a nice Italian dinner where it's rich, but also light It might be a little expensive. It might be a little bit above your pay grade, but you're going to want to stay for it to pay off all at the end. It particularly struck out to me at times because way back when in high school, senior year English, all the students had to, one of the graduation requirements was you had to write a thesis, and the majority of our English class that year was spent developing this thesis, this long research paper on either an author and a play or a playwright, and then you could kind of you would read a few of their works and look for common motifs and themes and form some sort of argument about it and analyze it. So I did Tennessee Williams, so I read 5 of his plays. Most of them I read most of the one mentioned in this, and obviously I wrote about them. However, that was 9 years ago at this point. So it's been quite a while. I only read them for that. I read them multiple times, but I never performed in one. I never have seen one, actually. And I do find that, of course, if you're performing, or even if you've seen one live, that play or performance does tend to stick with you a lot more than if you just read it sort of as a novel or just read the script on your own. But that's not to say that, 8 years later, plenty of bits and bobs in this novel resonated with me. It's also just very, fun to time travel back to the 50s and the 60s and the glamour and glitz of the world, but also sad at times to see, how people had to hide their sexuality and how people, lived their lives was a lot sadder at times. But, also they produced plenty of art that still sticks with us and that we're still writing about today. So, if you're into 20th century playwrights and all that jazz, check this one out. Wasn't that such a glowing review? And lastly, we have Drifts, a novel by Kate Zambreno. I love Kate Zambreno. She is one of my favorite authors. Her novel Green Girl I first heard of it because it was recommended in a Roxane Gay book, who is another Queen author, top 10. And it's stream of consciousness about a young woman discovering herself and her existential crises working in consumerism and at a department store. And I freaking loved that. I've read her other works. She has a book of short stories that are pretty obscure and also short stories. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything else. Oh, and then Screen Test. Screen Test was another book of short stories that were a little more accessible than the other one, which is called Oh, Fallen Angel. And it's, they're published 10 years apart, and I hate to say it, but I think sometimes Kate Zambreno can be even a little too out there for the people who like the out there stuff. So it makes sense that in those 10 years she kind of evolved to a slightly more palatable appeal. But Drifts is her latest work. It is so cool because it's marketed as a novel, and as you're reading it, so the main character is trying to write her own novel in the novel, and if that makes sense. So the book is about her writing a book and or failing to write this book called Drifts. However, it is about her, and it's a memoir. It's a memoir, but it's a memoir about what happens when I don't have anything to say, but I'm contracted to say something, and what happens when this book becomes less about me and more of a commodified object that I have to sell and that I have to complete in a certain amount of time, and what happens when I have, lost where I was without ever really knowing where I was to begin with. And it's also, it weaves in a lot of French philosophy, which again is not always the most accessible for people, but in this stream of consciousness, because it is someone who deftly balances that fiction and nonfiction blend, you can just picture everything happening so clearly and it's her, but the way that she paints it is, her reality and how she experienced it, but I could have gone through the same exact thing as her, and you're going to get totally two different perspectives simply on how we write it, and just the way that she frames her things is completely beautiful. So even if you aren't familiar with her work, this is probably one of the more palatable, accessible ones. It seems to have started sort of a trend of this, is it a memoir, but is it fiction? And if I don't explicitly call it a memoir, then I can kind of go more into the surreal, magical thinking world. And don't get me wrong, I'm totally here for it, but it's kind of confusing when you feel like a lot about these authors as people just from what you've read in their work as it develops, and or if you follow them on social media. In the case of Sam Lansky, like I read his first book called The Gilded Razor, which was a memoir all about his time as a drug-addled preppy in New York City and as a teenager and dealing with all of that and how he became sober. And it's really, and also he's gay, so dealing with his relationships and AIDS and his image to his parents. And so I read that in college when it came out. And then he just released a book called Broken People, which is, again, targeted as a novel. So I was like, oh, great. I can't wait to read this like fictional piece of work that Sam Lansky wrote. And the main character's name is Sam, and also seems to have gone through a spiritual journey where many moments of his life are recalled and things that got him to there, which seem like things that Sam did. So then I'm like, is this a memoir? But some things also, especially this, with the like sort of shaman journey piece to it, are condensed. But it's just it's a cool way to look at people's lives. And when you're writing anything, I'm sure a piece of your life comes into it, whether it's the setting or the characters or something. But to fully like take your own story and rewrite it the way you want it to be and the way you want it to be perceived is kind of cool. And you reclaim your past, and you get to show off this really cool piece that's also like, hey, I'm a writer already, so this is my craft. Anyways, we were all over the place today, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you pick up at least one of these books, if not all of them. I hope you check out Quiz. If you don't read any of these, at least watch Quiz. I mean, who does not have time to watch three TV episodes? I was about to say 3 TV shows. 3 TV episodes under an hour. You can do it. All the links to the books I mentioned will be below. Make sure you follow me on Goodreads so you can see what I'm reading in real time. As always, I'd love to know what you're reading and what I should be checking out, and what should be my latest beach, but not beach because I'm just at home on the couch read. So until then, keep reading.